Hello and welcome to the CFB Super Show, brought to you by the world famous FTN Network. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces himself, the niche sports connoisseur. I am doing these shows from technically it's my garage, okay? It's the garage. So I wanna, talk a little bit about this before we get into the real content that you came for. Got a soundproof thing behind me, got some banners, got some, cause figures. I got this cool little microphone set up. I got all this stuff and I'm ready and I'm feeling good. But did not account for how, as we get closer to Halloween around the Pacific Northwest, the weather turns frigid, very, very frigid. And as I'm out here this morning getting ready to do my thing, I can't help but realize I'm freezing. And so I got the layers on. In case you're wondering why I'm dressed for the X Games snowboarding contest. It's cold, so I'm layered up here this morning. But the show goes on regardless of what the weather is like. I'm here. We're doing our pre-lock business. Now, last week on the pre-lock show, we had a lot of success. There were a ton of injury situations, late breaking news, tons of information in general to process. We were able to work through it live on the air, come to a conclusion of what we should do, switching out to what player. We ended up getting a Oklahoma running back by the name of Gavin Sawchuk at sub 15% in a lot of contests. I think he got up to like 18, 20 in others. A lot of people didn't adjust quickly. Great matchup. The Oklahoma running back room thinned out a bit. And yes, he had a horrible first drive, dropped pass, fumble, stuffed for a loss. Could have had a hell of a lot better day, but he did rush for a touchdown near the end, and he ended up with 15 and a half DK points. That's a success for a player that's sub 5K. Really feeling confident about where we stand here in week 9. As the knowledge, the edge, the DVP, all that stuff becomes clear, we're going to be able to land on players who are less owned, line in the sand style plays that we're known for here at FTN, and we're going to be able to avoid some bad chalk, which was what we were able to do last week, the week before. Of course, Mike Wright a couple of weeks ago, remember how bad he did, and he was super chalky. So I'm very, very confident and comfortable with how we are going to do the rest of the way. If you're watching live, thank you very much. Make sure you smash that like button. Yeah, get us some more views so that I can get myself a space heater. Because, yeah, it's going to be a cold winter around these parts. If you have questions, make sure you ask those in the comment section. I will be checking Discord, Twitter DMs, and every other spot possible to answer those questions live on the air if you got them. This slate is a little bit different than last week. There are far less video game-esque situations where we have to worry about, man, this is going to be a super high-scoring slate. It still could be because there's plenty of value, but there are also plenty of defensive battles on this slate as well. We're going to go through and kind of just reiterate where I stand for my top 3 or 4 plays at each position, talking about cores on both sides, any injury news that we need to check on, and any prop betting stuff that's popped out or PrizePicks. Pretty much the same for me that it was on Thursday night, but if there's any changes, I will definitely talk to you about those as well. The news that we want to kind of let's start there. Let's start there. So Johnny Wilson likely out. We kind of expected that for Florida State. That makes Jaheim Bell and Keon Coleman strong plays. Tawi Walker back from suspension. We knew that for Oklahoma, so that drops Sawchuk back down the pecking order there. Marcus Major still around. If you're using anyone from Oklahoma, he's still probably just using Gabriel or perhaps Gabriel with Nick Anderson. Big news for Houston. Joseph Manjack did not make the trip there, so he will not be playing for this game against K-State. That does bump up the usage, targets, all that good stuff for Matthew Golden and Samuel Brown. I personally think Houston is going to struggle a little bit here, so I'm not in a hurry to go out and get those guys just because of Manjack being out. If you're running multiple lineups, MME stuff, and you want some exposure to other guys, sure. But after what we just saw Kansas State do to a TCU offense that's pretty damn good, I'm not so sure that Houston is really where we want to go here. All right. Trying to just catch up on any other news that might still be there. Xavier Leggett, probable. there was a lot of potential for cheap South Carolina guys there. We know Juice Wells still out. We know Amarian Brown is definitely out. Leggett playing means Lewis, Omega Blake, not really on our radars as much. The combo tight end wide receiver Trey Knox, who I felt like we were being a little sneaky with on Thursday, is actually turning out to be somewhat popular. I'm seeing other spots on social media talking him up, so there's potential for him to actually be a little bit higher owned than I was expecting. With the news of Leggett playing, maybe that dumps him down a little bit more, but I still think he's a great play at 4K on DraftKings and somebody that I am remaining on, even with Leggett playing. They're still down several options. They need offensive playmakers. Knox is a really safe bet for the FTN special 550 and a touchdown today. So I'm sticking with Trey Knox in case anybody is wondering where I stand on that. Sino in uniform. Yep. We pretty much expected that. He was probable tight end there for K-State. Went out early last game, which did make Will Swanson a viable play going into this if he were to be out. He caught a touchdown last week, but the fact that Sano is back and in uniform means we can drop down on Swanson. Good segue into a couple of sneak plays here. Keegan Johnson considered a game time decision. Looks very, very doubtful. RJ Garcia, also a game time decision. I will check and see what their updated status is here in a minute. You guys that are checking Twitter, if you see it before me, feel free to post it. That means our guy that we talked about, Purple People Eater, usually the last couple of seasons we found a purple jerseyed, low-owned, cheap receiver that's done us well. That is going to be Jace Brown today, coming off the 4-catch, 88-yard, 1-touchdown performance, targeted 6 times last week, has a very, very good rapport with Avery Johnson. We need him to build that chemistry with Will Howard because the coaching staff does say Will Howard is still their guy and they're going to be playing him a lot. But I mean, it's obvious Avery's going to play too. So at this point, they're just both going to play. So we need Jace to have that chemistry with both. Regardless of what happens with Garcia and Johnson, even if they were to play, Johnson's not on the starting lineup of the depth chart. He's been moved to a backup, and Jace Brown does have a top starting spot on the top of the depth chart. So regardless there, Jace Brown's going to get that first crack, been rewarded for his performance against TCU. And going forward, it does look like he has a chance to be the guy. I know they still have Phillip Brooks, who has been anything but consistent this year, has shown himself to be a high upside player at times, but really 6K, he's kind of just an okay option at times. He's not a star by any means, but I think that we have a chance to see Jace Brown really ascend, and this is a great matchup against Houston in which he's going to be able to do some serious damage, and I do think he puts a touchdown on the board for us, possibly even 100 receiving yards. So Jace Brown at 3.9 is the sneak of the slate. We've got to the point of the season where it's line in the sand. Like, I need to get myself some props, get some sand, draw the line and say, here we go, because I am no longer trying to have these large player pools where we're hemming and hawing. We have the data in front of us now, and just like we do in college basketball, we are going to be going hard at the plays that we like, regardless of their ownership, regardless of their price, and that is going to be that. Even if they do bad, especially going to own that win or lose like I always do. With that Gavin Sawchuk play last week, it felt like it was turning into a very sour situation, but it did end up working out, so we're happy there. But even if it hadn't, I think the decision there was sound, and we definitely did the right move. All right, we're going to get into some questions here in a second while we're preparing for the sled dogs out here. Mush. All right. Yep, we know. All right, so before we get into those, I just want to rehash the top plays at each position. Quarterback for me, very high on Garrett Green. I think he's been phenomenal this year. Yes, JRP is trending to be very chalky. Yes, Dylan Gabriel is trending to be very chalky. Both are solid plays. This is not a situation where I say I like waffles and you guys ask me, oh, so you hate pancakes? This is not that situation. So I like Garrett Green. Doesn't mean I don't like JRP or don't like Dylan Gabriel. I am just prioritizing Green because I think going up against this UCF team, his passing is improving, but he's a very dangerous dual threat. He can make this rush defense extremely befuddled with his mobility. I know that there are Justin Johnson, CJ Donaldson, a couple of other playmakers on this West Virginia team, but to me, I think Green is going to have a really big day and possibly rush for 100 yards again. So he's my top guy at the position. Others to look at, obviously, Max Johnson, the pass funnel that is South Carolina, 6'5", if you want to go that route. Caleb Williams, if you think he's due for a big bounce back. And then the always GPP large field tournament play, Jordan Travis of Florida State. And then if you are a believer in paying way down to 5'8", Cal's quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, assuming he's going to be the one going, no Ben Finley, because Finley is just kind of stiff. Mendoza is a solid play against that USC defense. At the running back spot, there are a myriad of ways to go. We are going to eat that chalk on Jonathan Brooks, just too good. Obviously, no Quinn Ewers. Brooks is going to get a heavy amount of volume. He's shown himself to be a solid pass catcher. It is a good spot to go to CJ Baxter for GPPs as well, but for your main lineup, paying up for Brooks just makes way too much sense. Lev Moss at 5'2", going against that South Carolina team. Yes, they're a pass funnel, but also they're giving up a ton of yardage to running backs as well. At this point, South Carolina's defense is just generally terrible. So Lev Moss, high on my list as well. Audric Estime, who nobody's playing today, because we have these cheapies at wide receiver, because I'm not paying for Caleb Williams, and I'm assuming a lot of you aren't either, we have this salary at our disposal to pay up at running back. And some of our best lineups over the last couple of seasons have been from paying up for running backs while everybody else tries to skimp. To me, skimping at wide receiver in college is more of an optimal way to build. In the NFL, you got to have those Justin Jeffersons and those 9K Tyreek Hills, or else you're just going to get buried. Not the case in college football, and getting away without having a expensive wide receiver is something that we've been able to do. Getting away from having those high-priced premium running backs that break the slate, much more difficult to get away from that and still profit when you don't have them. So the fact that Estime is trending to be like 3 to 4% owned kind of is strange. He's going to get heavy volume against this Pittsburgh team. We're talking 25, maybe even 30 touches, not necessarily all carries, but he is going to put up a big number. He hasn't been electric lately, but the volume is there, and he's just going to end up piling up 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns quite easily, and nobody's going to have him. Inevitably, one of these expensive or premium high-owned running backs is going to bust. Perhaps Brooks has a bad game, RJ Harvey, who everybody's on, Treshaun Ward, who is trending to be heavy chalk. One of those guys is going to blank, and having estimates 20, 25 fantasy points, in the hole is going to be big for you for the rest of the day. So that's why I'm going with Audric. I'm have that salary available, and it's just a very simple Brooks, Audric, Le'Veon Moss. It is a 4 running back day if you want to go that route. There are 2 quarterbacks, out of this pool that you can use. There are about 4 or 5 that I'm comfortable with, but I do think 4 running backs is a way to go. Also, you got to look at the Utah kid. He is a absolute machine of a player. Safety turned running back. They're going to really work on getting him the football today, Sion Vaki. There's talk of they're going to bring back his defensive snaps way down, bring up his offensive snaps. He's facing an Oregon defense that on paper, I touched on this in the article, they're very good statistically speaking, but when you go into the actual box scores or you watch the actual games, their defense is no steel curtain. They gave up 100 yards to Dylan Johnson of the future world champion, I should say, Washington Huskies. They have been, the last couple of games, really susceptible to, playmakers putting up a high fantasy point number. So I think it gets skewed a little bit that, hey, this Oregon team, they're going to shut down everybody. I mean, even go and look at Washington State last week. Cam Ward threw for almost 450 yards against them after he had been struggling. The running game of Washington State sucks, so can't really look at that, even though Nakia Watson did score a touchdown for what it's worth. But 2 different receivers on the Cougars eclipsed 100 yards. And Vaki, as a running back / receiver combo type player, will be used in a myriad of ways, whether it's as a receiver or a running back. Remember, 2 weeks ago, he scored a couple touchdowns as a running back. Last week, he scored 2 touchdowns as a receiver. He's going to be a very serious problem for this Oregon defense. But they shut down Colorado. Colorado, they had a humbling coming to them. That was one of those situations, and this is hard for numbers guys to process. There's a lot of mental aspect to the game, especially at the collegiate level. And that Oregon defense played inspired, but you saw what happened to them after against the Huskies and Washington State. They did beat the Cougars, but defensively, I'm not really too scared of this Oregon team like most people are. So I think Backy should at 5K be like, there's no reason for him not to be 40% owned today, honestly, from what I've read and what his role going forward is going to be. He's probably going to be like sub 10% because I think people are so wrapped up in the other running backs and the defense of Oregon. Just, it's too good. It's too good. So another spot for us that we're going to be in a favorable situation. And then at wide receiver, I'm still on Trey Knox. Mentioned that. He's just cheap, makes my lineup work very well, 4K. No reason not to use Trey Knox. At this point, Jace Brown, I'm probably married to the play. I will admit that it's far from a lock, but at 3.9, he doesn't need to put up 100 yards and multiple touchdowns, although I think he definitely could. And he's not going to get blanked. He's going to get targeted regardless, and he's going to work out just fine. As for the third receiver spot, Jaheim Bell of FSU, is you really need an expensive quarterback or you're running out of space and you need the salary savings. 3 tight end / cheap wide receivers works just fine. If you have the salary and you're building a type of lineup where you have one spot for receiver and you have 7K plus, Keon Coleman makes a lot of sense. Taj Washington makes a lot of sense. If you can get up to Troy Franklin, I think he has a nice little bounce back, even though Utah's defense is very good, of course. There's several options and several ways you can go with that third receiver spot. So I think we're going to see a lot of different lineups out there today because there is no consensus third receiver for that. All right, let's see. Let's see what we got. Chase Coleman, you already know. Walt, favorite running backs? Yes, sir. So kind of, probably figured it out. I just went through the running backs, but to make it clear, Jonathan Brooks, and we're talking DraftKings first. Jonathan Brooks, Audric Estime, who it just still, I mean, I know he's almost 8K, but it's just so weird that no one's using him. And then Sion Vacchi at 5K is fantastic. Lev Moss and Bucky Irving as a GP special. And then the Kansas State running backs, whether that's Treshaun Ward or DJ Giddens. That's the group that I'm really pulling from for my main lineup. All right, let's get into Discord because I know there's a lot going on there. Favorite wide receiver for $7,400 for cash on FanDuel. And let me go back onto FanDuel because I don't want to ignore the FanDuel crowd. So favorite running backs on FanDuel, Omarion Hampton, Ollie Gordon. Got a pretty much heat check Ollie Gordon at this time after he rushed for almost 300 yards. I don't particularly love the idea of paying 10-6 for him, but I don't know that we can fade him right now. When it comes to the DFS, strategies and all that, you don't hear a lot of people talk about heat checking a guy. This kind of goes in the mental side of the game, or if you've played sports, you're feeling confident. So I'm just going to heat check Ollie Gordon until further notice. 10-6 is very prohibitive, especially since I want Tez Walker and Drake May and all these other guys on FanDuel. Find a way to get Ollie Gordon into your lineup because if he puts up 40 plus again, you're just not going to be able to compete. That means if I have to sacrifice Jonathan Brooks on FanDuel to make it work, I will. If I have to sacrifice Bucky Irving, I will. Love Carson Steele at 8.8 on FanDuel as well, going up against that Colorado defense that is putrid. Braylon Allen at 8.5 is a nice little GPP spot there on FanDuel as well. All right, so FanDuel 7,400 cash receiver. There's a lot of expensive guys this week. At that price, if you can get the 100 more for a Jeremiah Hunter, Jaheim Bell, do so. Otherwise, Jimmy Horn, Tez Johnson, Taj Davis, J. Michael Sturdivant, or even Ricky Purcell. I know going up against Georgia is not great, but any of those guys would be fine to run on FanDuel and use in your main lineup. No issues at all. Do you expect Mendoza to start? Yes, si, senor. Are you okay with Green and Johnson together? Now, Justin Johnson is a Jake Kuchek play. I don't mind it. We're a little different in that I usually like, even though I played Sawchuck last week, that's different. If a cheap running back falls into our laps, like, yeah, okay. Like if it comes out in the next, 20 minutes that, hey, CJ Donaldson is on the shelf, they're just going to bench him, then yeah, I'm going to fall all over myself to roster Justin Johnson. So we'll be clear about that. But we're a little different in that I'm usually trying to skimp at wide receiver where possible. I want to go cheap there. And I want those premium running backs because the reason the 4 running back lineups work so well is because the running backs at the collegiate level, and granted, the first couple of weeks, maybe not so much, but generally speaking, and we have a few seasons of data here, running backs perform at a high level at the collegiate space, and they usually have been able to meet or exceed some of those super flex quarterback scores. You'll see quarterbacks, if they're not mobile, they'll throw for, what was the kid for SMU a couple years ago? Not Tanner Mordecai. Got him drawing a blank. Anyways, he'd throw for like 400 yards and 3 touchdowns and no rushing yards, and it'd be like, oh wow, he's gonna have such a big score, and he had like 28 because there's no rushing there. Meanwhile, the running back that rushes for 150 and 3 like just obliterates that score. So if there's a mobile quarterback, then yeah, that obviously is different. But if you got a guy who's kind of a statue, and Shane Buechele, that's who it was. Took me a second there. Had to dig deep in the Ken Palm stats and move those aside and find the college football data there. So I'm generally higher on paying up at running back than not. But the Justin Johnson play, if it's truly a situation that Jake believes, and kudos to him if it is right, where he's going to get 20 plus touches and Donaldson's suddenly going to be getting like 5 to 8, then yeah, Johnson makes a lot of sense. I'm all in on Green. There's nothing going to change my mind from playing him. If he ends up sucking today, throws multiple touchdowns, multiple touchdowns would be good. Multiple interceptions, gets benched, whatever. Like I'm still really happy with this play, regardless of how it plays out. It's the best situation. Everybody was on Dylan Gabriel last week in the same matchup. Now nobody wants to use Garrett Green, even though it's the same matchup and he's more mobile than Gabriel. That's just too good for me. And then somebody asked, are you stacking Green with anyone or running him naked? Definitely running him naked. I don't love the West Virginia receivers. Now Hudson Clement is doubtful / out. Cole Taylor, their number 1 tight end, is a fine option if you absolutely have to have a pair. Devin Carter is the highest targeted receiver on the team, especially lately. I don't really love him. You have cheapies like Preston Fox and Traylon Ray who have been getting more coach speak chatter lately. But I'm just running Green by himself and hoping that he scores a bunch of rushing touchdowns and runs for 100 yards. If he adds some passing touchdowns too, like hooray, but I'm not really too worried about that. Somebody asked, come on, man, Plumlee paired with Baker or Green naked with Taj Davis. So when I say that my number 1 quarterback is Garrett Green, like I mean my number 1 quarterback is Garrett Green. None of this like, I'm not going to call out any names. This is not about anyone in the industry, so don't think that I'm trying to call somebody out. But we're not here at FTN. We're not like, hey, I like this Green guy. I think he could do well. But Plumlee's good too. Plumlee's good too. I think that they'll both have a chance to do well. And then Plumlee goes off and be like, I told you, Plumlee's the man. Green goes off, I told you. No. And I did say, I say this a lot, trust your gut. So if you're waking up today and you're like, you know what, Plumlee is just too good of a spot. I want my guy. Well, he, I like what he had to say, but I got to play Plumlee. Like, please, it's at the end of the day, it's your money. You need to do what you're comfortable with. So Plumlee is a good option. If his mobility's back, he's going to do really well today. But I am on Garrett Green all in 100%. Like, I'm not fading him. I'm not running like 400 lineups either. So I'll be clear about that. I'm running like 2 or 3 today, and he's in all of them. So I'm kind of all in or all out on that guy, and right now I'm all in. And Taj Davis is a great play. So that's the 2 I'm going to go with. You'll see this if you're new to the college shows that we do. You'll see this a lot in college basketball. I'll get questions like, hey, this guy's projected to be highly owned. Your exposure to him is 10%. Like, are we okay? Yes, we're okay. I don't care about someone being high owned. I don't care about that. Like, I just play people who are good. If they're good, I'm going to play them. And there's a kid on Oregon named Jermaine Cuisinart who's always chalk every slate. He's not good. Everybody rosters him every week, and we just keep fading him, and he keeps putting up 2x. And it's just one of those things that I don't care about ownership. I do not care about ownership. I do not let it decide what I'm going to play. I know in the pro level you have to care, especially in the NBA, but you don't have to care so much in college. I don't know what that link you're trying to post is, Jay Craig. It's not working. It's not working for me. Let's go here. Let's check out what the Twitter machine has for us. Oh God, Oregon or Michigan is just getting aced for that scandal. CJ warming up with the 2s. Johnson warming up with Green. Yeah, they said that Justin Johnson, he's earned more looks. Now, I'm always leery of coaching or coach speak because how many times we have like this guy's going to be limited. Marcus Major last week. We're gonna limit his carries. He ended up having the most carries he's had all year with 18. And we see this all the time. But if Johnson ends up getting the starting nod, it makes sense. Yeah, it's not a situation where I think CJ Donaldson doesn't get touches. I think this will serve as a smack CJ Donaldson in the face. And hey, you can't have a 3.1 YPC anymore and continue to get looks. Like, you got to figure this out right now. And UCF is the perfect team to do so. If you're still grinding 2.5 to 3 yards per carry against them, like, you're probably done. So yeah, that's interesting for Justin Johnson. I wonder if that means his ownership is going to just balloon up. Top 4 quarterbacks on DK. Is it Jason Bean? Jason Bean's watching the show. You got a game to prepare for, man. All right, let's check. Top 4 quarterbacks. Ready? In order. Let's see. Who do I want number 1 to be? Garrett Green. Garrett Green. Just decided that just now. Second, that's a little tougher. Dylan Gabriel. Third is JRP, only because I admit, yes, if he's fully healthy, he's good and he's not priced up too high. That's probably a play that's going to end up smacking me in the face for being low on, but I want to be clear, I don't hate JRP. And then the fourth quarterback, that's a little tougher. Like Fernando Mendoza makes an awful lot of sense. I feel like USC might wake up a little bit today and smack Cal around to a degree. But Mendoza is so cheap, he doesn't really have to do anything to pay that off. It's kind of like a couple weeks ago when Utah had the cheap quarterback and 70% of the industry was on him, and he ended up putting up the best game of his life, proceeded to be horrible every week after, just kind of how that works. So I think Mendoza honestly comes in as the fourth for me. Jordan Travis right behind, Max Johnson right behind. Favorite second quarterback kind of ties in there. Dylan Gabriel. I just think, if you're going to go Green and you need a little bit more stability, not that Green's unstable by any means, but Gabriel offers you a lot of upside. Going to throw 35 plus passes, has that rushing upside as well. I do value Gabriel over JRP for what it's worth. Might as well just lean into the JRP fade and just own it later, right? But that's who my second favorite is. Just getting here, asking about FanDuel. So anyone in the North Carolina Georgia Tech game, I'm working on the DK night slate write-up, and I'm pretty much just playing guys from North Carolina Georgia Tech on FanDuel. It starts with Drake May, all the way in on Drake May, all the way in on Nate McCollum there on FanDuel because he's so cheap, all the way in on Amari and Hampton. I want to fit Tez. If I can get Walker in there, he's really expensive, almost 11K on FanDuel. I'm okay sacrificing him just to be able to fit some other pieces because we've got to get Ollie Gordon and some others. But I'm all over those guys. North Carolina. On the Georgia Tech side, Haynes King is a really nice run back option there because he's been putting up 30-plus fantasy points for regularity. Who would have ever thought Haynes King would be doing that? He has some cheap wide receiver options. Malik Rutherford at 6'6". He's actually the one on DraftKings later today that I'm featuring as one of my favorite receivers for salary savings. And then Ollie Gordon, who you have to pay up for. Carson Steele of UCLA against Colorado, also very high. And then, as always, the UCF receivers on FanDuel are dirt cheap. Javon Baker, probably the right call there. So that's the FanDuel player pool. Yes, USCD is trash. Mucha basura. No doubt. As the Pac-12 going out this year, and that's me being the type of guy, I'm a Washington Huskies fan, like super fan, right? And I know some people in their conferences, they're like, if my team can't win, I want somebody from my conference to win, and it's the tournament, and I'm rooting for, this team to win the tournament or win games. Like, I'm the opposite. Like, if the Huskies can't be good, I want everybody in the Pac-12 to suck. I don't want anyone to win games. I want everybody out in the first round. I don't want anybody to win games in the Pac-12 if the Huskies aren't winning, especially not the damn Cougars, especially not the Oregon Clucks. So it's fun to see USCD suck because you know, they get all this hype coming into the season. All we heard about was how great this unit's going to be. They've got future pros. They're going to shut down people. They're going to be way different. You can't target against them. And, you know, we just kind of lean into like, okay, show me how good this USCD is. We're gonna stack up the Spartans against them. And lo and behold, yeah, USCD is awful. They're worse than trash. So, you know, you got to have somebody from the Cal Bears. Might as well be Mendoza. The industry is all over Taj Davis. If you want to bounce back from Jeremiah Hunter, he makes a lot of sense as well. But yes, they're very, very bad. Favorite 2 quarterbacks on FanDuel: Drake May. Just plug Drake May in on any FanDuel lineup you make. He's going to absolutely nut against Georgia Tech. You know, and their loss still threw for a high number last week. Real bad loss. They're an upset team. This kind of goes back into playing a mental type of game. They're going to be very upset. They're not going to be overlooking their opponents. Drake May's probably going to throw 40 passes. He's going to throw several touchdowns to Tez. Omarion Hampton's going to do his thing too, but I think Drake May, you know, we're talking about 350, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 passing, 1 rushing, 11.2K. I know it's a lot, but you need to play Drake May. The second quarterback, because you're going to need some savings, right? This is a very stiff price FanDuel slate, considering how lackluster, cheap, laissez-faire they've been on other slates. There's still values that we can look at. I think if you can get May and Ethan Garbers, and these are FanDuel specific plays, Garbers getting the start for UCLA against Colorado. Who else has a really porous defense in the Pac-12? The Colorado Buffaloes do. Ethan Garber showed himself to be very, very good last week. Somebody who probably should have started the kid more. Too raw right now. I like him. I think he's going to be really good next year. But Garber should be able to carve up this Colorado team. And he's got a couple of receivers at his disposal and a really strong running back to keep the defense honest. Ethan Garbers would be my second quarterback on FanDuel. And there's, you know, Max Johnson. There's Malik Murphy. Mendoza's there at 6'6" on the FanDuel slate as well. You have Jordan Travis. You have Dylan Gabriel. There's a lot of options. So I'm just talking from a purely pricing standpoint. Drake May and Ethan Garbers. And then, you know, if you're really down and you can't fit any of these other options, then play Mendoza, because I don't expect Finley to start. And if Finley at this point, why play Finley? He played like I don't know, 1 drive last week, 2 drives when they played last 2 weeks ago, and he's not very good. So all right, we are at 8:30. Just want to check the news here. I do not see. Oh. Okay, so Oklahoma has some flux here. Ryan Aber. Let's first see who the hell Ryan Aber is, because I don't know who that is. 15.9K followers. Oklahoma Sooners beat writer for the Oklahoman. Also dabble in hockey and baseball. Nemesis to 3-year letterman. Oh, okay. So you're a funny guy. He says no Marcus Major today for the Sooners. He uses the term dressed out for another player, so that tells you what we're dealing with here. Any beat still using the term dressed out is not a friend of the DFS industry. Sawchuck, not on the depth chart either. They have Marcus Major on the depth chart, or Tawi Walker, or Javonte Barnes. But he has his little chart here, or his depth chart, where he X's out saying Barnes and Walker are the only 2 available. Good Lord. Big Noon kickoff video showed a video of Major in warmups. So nobody really knows what's going on with the Oklahoma running backs. Luckily, we don't really have to play them. Not seeing another one saying not seeing Marcus Major. Barnes limited as usual. Appears it'll be Gavin Sawchuk and Tawi Walker all day today. Okay. Man, that's tough. You know, this week's totally different. Like, we're not in a Kansas defense is dog trash, right? Like, rush defense, the Oklahoma running backs are real nice. But damn, I don't know that we can afford to do that this week, because if we swing and miss there's just so many other running backs on the slate. Last week it was a little different. The running backs group was not as strong, in my opinion, as it is this week. If we take Walker and he ends up, 5 carries for 12 yards, no touchdowns, no catches, it's just, it's on to the next slate, right? Sawchuk still building his confidence up after last week. I mean, it took a while for them to put him back in. They were using running or wide receivers at running back last week instead of Sawchuk to keep the ball out of his hands. So I think we can probably not use them, but if you're running multiple lineups, then you just go ahead and kind of rotate there. Because I mean, Sawchuk's still only 4.4. That's a great price for him for large field GPP. Walker at 5.1 is a little less exciting there for me. Just because he's been kind of a plotter, and we haven't really seen a whole lot out of him. And I know he's a pass catcher as well, so that's great. But those guys are GPP only options, I think. No Marcus Major confirmed. So a third beat writer now saying no Marcus Major. Running backs in warmups for Oklahoma: Tyree Walker, Gavin Sawchuk, Javonte Barnes. That's a surprise. Dalen Smothers. Dalen Smothers, super sneak. No, Javonte Barnes is not really. Well, although Oklahoma will say he's limited and he'll get 18 carries like Marcus Major last week, which is so weird that Major's not going to play. I wonder if it's a suspension situation, because he was supposed to be limited last week and wasn't. So I'm just staying away from that troll job Sooners in my main lineup. Gabriel, like if you're going to run any Sooners in your main lineup, it's just Dylan Gabriel and Nick Anderson, not Orlando Magic, Nick Anderson. Great name, by the way, but Nick Anderson, who highly efficient player, generally taking it to the house on his touches, but was targeted 9 times last week, and somebody who, if he's going to get heavy volume, makes sense as a pairing partner for Gabriel. So I'm just staying away from the Sooners running backs in Maine, because that situation's not for me. Not for me. All right. Just want to scroll through here and then we'll finish up. All right. So PrizePicks, just to go over those again, those of you playing PrizePicks: Garrett Green over 280.5 passing plus rushing combo yards. I love that category on PrizePicks. It's really good for dual threat quarterbacks. Drake May over 290.5 passing yards, which is a top prop for me on DraftKings as well. I think he throws for 300 plus really easily. Audric Estime over 95.5 rushing yards. He's rushing for 100 yards. Come on. And then Donovan Smith missing. I was already on this under, and I know it's unlikely to do unders, but now that he's missing Manjack too, under 269.5 passing yards for Donovan Smith. Props, top prop for me is Drake May over 290.5 passing yards on DK as well. That just gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling. And then anytime touchdown for Sion Vaki, plus 180. And we're just never going to get plus 450 on an anytime touchdown again, are we? Like we got it in week 0 and just never going to find that again. But I think he keeps his touchdown streak going. Love what I'm seeing out of him. Those are my top 2 props for DraftKings. We'll have some others loaded into the tracker here in a little bit, because after I get done here, I'm going to mosey my way on to the DraftKings Sportsbook. So I will plug those in as I play them. Those of you who are able to bet and in a state that allows that kind of thing. All right, last few minutes here. Get your questions in while you can. I'll answer an NFL question. Waddle, Olave, Adams, Myers, Flowers, Devontae Smith. Damn, you're pretty loaded. Olave, Zay Flowers. Maybe if he was playing for Boston College again. Waddle and Jacoby Myers. There you go, man. I take no responsibility if that group sucks, but all of the responsibility if they do well. Just kidding. Let's just see here. Yeah, that's a sexy lineup. Taj Davis or Jeremiah Hunter. That's one I've honestly struggled with, because everybody's going to use Taj Davis, former Husky, by the way. And he's a little cheaper on both sites. Jeremiah Hunter was terrible last week, just completely handcuffed by Utah defense. Like, they made a point to just not allow him to get the ball. had one target all game long. I think he does bounce back, but it is worth noting that he struggled the last couple of weeks, but he has faced some very stout defense in Utah and Oregon State. The USC defense will not be confused for either of those groups anytime soon. This is more like the ASU defense, where he put up 21 fantasy points against them, 6 catches, 89 yards. But I still think the discount on Taj Davis is worth it because Hunter's not putting up these big alpha-like games that you'd like to see. It's kept his price down for sure, but he's just not doing enough to warrant paying that 600 more for him realistically in anything more than like an alt build. Taj has shown his ability to really break, the slate and put up for his price, I should say. And 3 straight games over double digits. I think the defense is still going to continue to look at Hunter, and Davis is just going to continue to cook his one-on-one defender, which he did while he was at the Huskies, by the way. I wish he would have stayed, but when you got Rome and McMillan around, there's not a lot of room for Taj Davis. I've been looking at Troy Franklin a lot. I don't know, man. Like, the bounce back game for Troy Franklin this week after, a bad game for him, 4 catches for 79 yards, goes against what I want to do, which is paying down for receiver. But it seems like this spot for Audric Estime and Troy Franklin, the 2 highest priced options at their position on DraftKings at least, and nobody's using them. I just feel so weird about that because I think both are going to put up, 20 plus fantasy points with ease. Franklin has a matchup against Utah that on paper is tough, but Franklin is a pretty undefendable type of player, and they put him in a position to make plays. So that one makes me feel like I need to get a little more Troy Franklin exposure here before we ride into lock in the next couple of minutes. Favorite backs. Yep. So Lev Moss, Audric Estime. This is DraftKings, by the way. There is a difference this week. Jonathan Brooks. Those are all guys. Sion Vaki from Utah. Those are all guys that I'm heavy on. On the FanDuel side of things, Omarion Hampton, Ollie Gordon. Those 2 I think are must-use options, even at the expense of Jonathan Brooks, because I just don't think you're going to be able to play Hampton, Gordon, Brooks all together, plus Drake May, Tez. Like, at some point I have to, recognize that there's a salary cap. Can't just recommend all the top price options, which is something that others sometimes might do. Not calling anyone out. I'm not. But I would play Ollie Gordon over Jonathan Brooks on FanDuel for what it's worth. But I do have all the Jonathan Brooks on DraftKings. Just to recap this, because I know there's actually been quite a bit of people who joined within the last 10 minutes or so. I am paying down at wide receiver, paying up at running back. There is the Trey Knox play, which we are not alone in the industry. I thought it was going to be a sneaky play, but it's not, even with Leggett back. But there is a player by the name of Jace Brown of Kansas State. Going to put myself out there for this one. 3.9K on DraftKings. 4 catches on 6 targets a week ago, 88 yards and a touchdown. Did earn the right to sit atop the depth chart, regardless of what happens with the Kansas State injury situation with RJ Garcia, Keegan Johnson. Johnson is listed as a backup on the depth chart regardless. I think Brown has an established rapport with Avery Johnson. We need to get him some chemistry with Will Howard because the 2-quarterback system looks like it's here to stay. That's the only downside negative on Brown, but he is somebody who is absolutely going to become the best player on this Kansas State team from a receiver standpoint. I want to be early on him. I am using him heavily. That's your sneak play sub 5% owned option of the day, Jace Brown. All right, that's going to wrap it up. I'm just getting a bunch of people showing me lineups. I'll just answer that off there. So the rest of the next couple of weeks is going to be a lot of CBB coverage. We're still going to do the Thursday night CFB show, which breaks down the main slate with my co-host Jake. Also doing the pre-lock show Saturday morning, which is going to get real fun when we have college basketball and college football slates locking at the same time. There will be a preview show for the SEC and the Big East and mid-majors, low majors starting Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday night. We just got done doing a bunch of conference previews this past week. So if CBB is your thing, definitely continue to support and check out the Super Show. There will be written content every day. If there's, you don't even have to ask. If there's a slate, there's going to be write-ups, both college basketball and college football. Appreciate that continued support. Make sure you guys like, throw a comment on there if you want. Share the video. Appreciate all the support. The Super Show going strong since, Blog Talk Radio days of 2013. Listen to one of the old episodes the other day, and let me tell you, we've come a long way. So I appreciate it. Best of luck out there today. Let's light up the Discord with green screens and on Twitter. If you have questions further in the next couple of hours in regards to this slate or the next, you can hit me at dubdeuces85 on Twitter. I usually answer or see all my notifications on Discord and social media. I do the type of job both here and in my day job where I have my phone all the time, so I will not miss it. Thanks very much, guys. Take care. See y'all later.